I showed Brian these wrestlers dressed as the Ghostbusters wrestling, and he didn't even ask me how to watch it.
I feel like I've seen enough out of the pictures that you showed me. I get the gist of what happened. They came out wearing the costumes. They were sort of kind of maybe pinned by Kratos, and then they beat everybody with proton packs and won the match.
No, they lost. The guy
So
that came...
I got the two pictures reversed.
Well, I didn't show you this part, but another guy came out in a State Puff Marshmallow costume. But he wasn't actually their partner, so at the end of the match, he revealed who he really was and beat the shit out of all of them.
Well, that's poetic justice right there.
Mm-hmm. So the Ghostbusters lost to the Marshmallow, if you're keeping score.
40 years in the making, Stay Puft finally got his revenge. Hello and welcome to another episode of Bragg and Super Friends. I'm your host, Brian Labick, and I was too lazy to think of intros this week, so I'm going to be very boring, and I'm sorry. But joining us for this episode is Andy Stoles.
What's up, podcast people?
Mike Bradley's up next.
I'm so disappointed in you.
I'm sure you would be. And last, Ian Leidick.
How you doing? Dooning.
How you doing? I get it now. I get it.
Oh,
now.
you saw that meme too? I saw that.
No, I created that.
I highly doubt that.
Listen to the intro, everyone, and you'll see how gifted I am.
So yeah, we are. My intro probably didn't sell it very well, but we're here to talk about Dune. This is the 2021 version, not to be confused with 1984's Dune. This is the 2021 version from my boy Denny V, sci-fi epic with a star-studded cast. I feel like we should mention too that Denny V I don't feel like is very too happy with Warner Brothers. Maybe a little bit more happy lately, but prior to all of this, he made the movie specifically for IMAX, and then Warner Brothers decided to release Dune as part of their 2021 movie slate. Day and date release for theaters and HBO Max. So Dune has been promoted as something that's a must-see for theaters. I think Denny V has still been talking about how he never envisioned this to be something that you could see on a streaming device, at least for a first viewing. He never wants it to be like something on a small screen on a phone or something like that. It's made for the theater, for a big screen. But here we are. Dune has released in theaters and HBO Max. So going around everybody, how did you watch Dune? Did you make it to the theater or did you watch it at home? Andy, where'd you watch it?
Watch it in the theater.
Okay. Did you do IMAX or just regular?
A normal theater.
Normal theater, okay.
Yeah.
Ian, where did you see it?
I watched it on my PSP 2000.
Did you only watch it once or twice?
Only on the PSP 2000.
Okay. Mike, where'd you watch it?
Home theater.
Okay. I made it a point to go see it in IMAX because that's what Denny V was talking about. So I did opening night IMAX, and then chipped away over 2 days, watched it at home to get a second viewing in. So I did watch it twice.
You went on opening night?
Well, that Friday.
So
no.
Thursday was
sorry.
opening night.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. No. I'm getting all my days screwed up. I went Saturday night, so it was opening weekend, not opening night. My mistake.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think you were there opening night. I'm pretty sure I know where you were.
But yeah, it kind of sucks that it's on like HBO Max at the same time, just because I would like this to be one of those exclusive theater movies. But at the same time, after you see it in theater, it is nice to just, if you want to watch it again, hey, it's there. Now I can watch it at home. Like I kind of dig that.
I just don't think you need to see movies in theaters. I don't think it's.
I highly disagree.
I don't think Dune is better in theaters than it is at home.
I would disagree with that. I think the IMAX screen I thought was really cool. I think the sound design is a lot better than anything I can get at home.
I mean, I think seeing it on an IMAX screen just proved to me that there's no reason the screens don't matter. I can just watch this at home. Like, this wasn't like, holy shit, I can't believe this is a fucking amazing screen. It's like, no, it's a screen. You see them all the time. It just works.
So you're going to see any movies in the theater at all going forward?
Feel like no, because you don't need to. Like the sound, even with this movie, at most it was too loud, and I feel like it did a disservice to the movie, if anything.
I will admit, yeah, there's a couple dialogue sequences that I feel like were a little bit more difficult to hear that I could make out better at home. But I do like the loud booming sound of a theater, and especially for action scenes and stuff like that.
And also, when I'm at home, I don't have the guy next to me saying, "You excited to see this?" It's like, no, I just am out here in a pandemic for no fucking reason.
I mean, you might be.
A person I was talking to Tuesday was telling me about their experience in IMAX with it, where they went and it was like them and their friend and one other couple, and they kind of let it go because it sounded like the person that was talking throughout the whole movie was just so excited because it's their favorite sci-fi franchise ever, and he just kept talking and like telling the person like, "Oh, you're gonna see what," and he was just so excited, and it was cute, but also annoying at the same time because he's talking all throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, the crowds in movies are a big reason when I feel like I don't go to a movie. It's because like if it's crowded, I'm gonna be like, ugh. But in terms of this specific movie, I don't have an IMAX screen anywhere close by.
Yeah.
It is a haul to get to I used to have one 10 minutes away. You know, that maybe eventually...
The Mills?
Yeah.
The Mills didn't open it back up yet?
Half of the Mills is open. Like that
Okay.
theater they have there. The IMAX screen in their other really big theater, they're not currently showing in. So if they were to open that back up, I'd be more inclined. It's for things that like I was excited for Dune, but am I going to drive an hour plus to get to an IMAX screen? No.
Yeah.
Like that's a really tough sell for me right now.
I will say too, like Saturday night when I went, it was literally packed, like elbow to elbow in the theater.
Yeah,
There was, if you looked at the seating chart, there was like a couple single seats places, but that was it.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I like that Dolby theater. You get some personal space.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit more bubble, like personal bubble there.
That I'll drive an hour for.
Yeah.
The IMAX theater just being a bit louder and a little bit taller is like, I'm not driving an hour for that.
Right.
Where is there a Dolby theater?
Same place.
Waterfront.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, their IMAX and Dolby theaters are right next to each other at that theater.
Yeah. But the Dolby's like these nice big leather chairs and just wonderfully
reclining
comfortable
seats and all that stuff.
Yeah. It's as comfortable as watching at home. Like
No, because like you have other issues. Like you go to the movies, like and there's trailers playing, and then the guy next to you's blaring music with his eyes shut because he's scared of spoilers. It's just it's annoying. It's not a fun environment. And then he's like, "Batman!" And you're like, "Why is he yelling Batman at me?" And then like 10 seconds later, you realize the Batman's trailer started, and he's now staring at his knee.
I don't know who you'd be referring to at all.
Yeah.
Who could I possibly be talking about?
I definitely haven't experienced this.
Yeah, I feel like we've talked about it. Like, I go to the theater, I like seeing movies in the theater, but I also want to avoid most of the trailers that have been shown in front of the theater, in front of the movie. So there are a select few that I have to plug my ears and close my eyes and avoid stuff so I don't catch something I've been avoiding for months. So the easiest way to do that is take a pair of headphones and plug some music in your ear and hide your face. So that's been my go-to for all the movies that I've been seeing recently. So, you know, heads up to anybody that sits next to me in a movie. You may or may not hear some music during the preview. What else was I going to... Oh, so Andy, I found this... We were in the theater. I'm waiting for watching the credits go through. Waiting to see if there's an end credit scene, which, by the way, there isn't, if anyone's curious.
Did you see the guy with the last name that was mine?
Yes, the stereoscopic coordinator.
I was like, what was his name?
Arden Stoles.
Yeah.
I was like, is
2S,
that any
Arden,
relation to our boy Andy? Because it looks like it's...
I don't know. I have no idea. I should, like Google that shit.
I feel like I caught Stoles, and then, like, my eyes went left to the first name, and I saw, like, the A there, and I was like, Andy!
There's an
Andy was involved in this movie. So,
no,
yeah.
I did the same thing. That was, like, the only name that I saw, just because, just, like, recognition. I'm like,
right.
Fuck.
Yeah, so you have to do some research, see if that's in your family tree somewhere, and let us know.
Okay.
All right, so Dune the movie is based on a book of the same name by Frank Herbert, which was originally published in 1965. Herbert wrote 5 other sequels until his death in 1986. At that point, his son Brian and another author, Kevin J. Anderson, have continued to write the novels in the franchise. 2021's Dune is directed by Denny Villeneuve, who is the director of Prisoners, Sicario, Arrival, which topped my list of top 10 movies for 2016, and Blade Runner 2049, which topped my list of top 10 movies for 2017. So I've been very curious to see what he'd do with this movie. Screenplay is written by Denny V, John Spates, and Eric Roth. Film stars Timothy Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Jason Momoa, Stellan Skarsgård, Josh Brolin, Javier Bardem, Dave Bautista, Dave Desmalchin, and Zendaya. Current Rotten Tomatoes ratings. Critic score 84%, audience score 91%. Metacritic score, there's the Metascore of 74, user score 8.2. The last I checked the box office, it had a domestic opening weekend of 41 million. Internationally, it had made 182 million, which puts its worldwide total at 223 million worldwide. Going back to some of the earlier Dune stuff, either the books or the 1984 movie, has any of you guys either read the books or saw the 1984 movie? Mike, we'll start with you.
The movie I saw a long time ago. I don't remember a ton about it, but I have seen it. And the book, same kind of thing. I read a long time ago. Probably 15 to 20 years ago. I was probably in high school.
Yeah.
So, don't remember a ton. But
was anything familiar to you, or?
I mean, you remember the names, the Atreides, the Harkonnens, like you remember certain pieces, but
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not, the events are all like, oh yeah, like when some, I don't want to, get specific, but
yeah.
When something happens, it's like, yeah, I kind of remember that. Some of them you're like, you don't remember it all, but
right.
Andy,
read the books or see the old movie?
The old movie I remember seeing in the background when my dad was watching it. I was too young to really understand a lick of what was going on.
That wouldn't have mattered.
I remember disliking it.
I mean, you don't need to get into specifics, but has this movie changed your opinion of Dune?
Yes.
Okay. And we'll dive into that during the course of the review. Ian, books or movie, have you read either?
I watched the documentary Jabberwocky Dune about another attempt to make Dune. Didn't see the 1984 film, and I have read the novel.
Okay. How well do you remember the novel? Does this stick pretty well to the book?
I mean, there's a lot of stuff cut, especially some of the heavier political themes and just intrigue, honestly. Okay. And it got rid of my favorite line, which is when the big climax is happening, I'll say.
Okay.
Someone says, "What is this, some kind of doomsday plot?"
Is that really a thing, or did you make that up?
I made that up.
Okay.
But you're thinking about it now. Imagining Chalamet saying that.
How many more Dune puns have you wrote?
I didn't write any of these down, so be ready.
You're not. There's more Dune puns to come, though. Okay.
He's probably just looking at a webpage and just checking them off as he goes as we go through this podcast. Yeah, I have not read the books. I have not seen the 1984 movie. Like, I was going into this, like, I had a vague idea that, like, it's in the desert and there's a big worm, and that's probably because I'd seen a trailer prior to this movie that sort of reminded me of that, but I went in pretty much completely blind to this. So this was all new to me, and I dug it a lot. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that since it sort of opens the movie, but once the title card pops up, it says Part 1. So we just found out earlier this week that Warner Brothers and Legendary have officially announced Part 2 is coming October 20th, 2023, so there will be more Dune.
To be fair with that, I honestly wasn't sure if they were announcing that Part 1 as Part 1 of this movie, and at some point we were going to see Part 2 pop up in this movie. I wasn't sure at that point whether this was the whole movie was Part 1, or if they were titling chapters in the movie that way. I wasn't, it
I
wasn't
thought that
clear
too.
at the start.
I thought we might get like a Zack Snyder's Justice League chapters type of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're officially getting more. I don't know how many parts they would put into Dune. I don't know if we're just going to get part 2 and that's going to be it. If we're going to get parts 2, 3, 4, 5, like I don't know how long it's going to go.
Well, I
but
think that would depend on how many books they do.
How much money it makes.
yeah,
If it keeps
Yeah.
making money, they'll continue the story.
yeah. So yeah, because it feels like a franchise in the making. I feel like.
I
So-
agree.
I don't, but okay, we can talk about that later.
All right. Yeah.
I
Well,
feel like they already have a show signed on for HBO Max, don't they?
a Dune show.
Yes.
I don't know if I knew that.
Denny V, I think, is doing it. It's about the that sisterhood of the Bene.
Bene Gesserit.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. Okay. I will have to try to research that as we go and see if I can confirm that.
Thought I saw snippets of that.
That
It's
might have been
called
announced
Dune
like a while
Patrol.
ago, and I just kind of forgot about it. But all right, yeah, I'll have to try to look at that as we're going. I guess before we get into spoilers, let's go through some like general spoiler-free thoughts just to give these guys an idea what we're thinking of the movie before we get into specifics. So, Ian, what'd you think? Spoiler-free, general thoughts. What do you think of the movie?
I enjoyed the movie a lot. I thought it was a good, fun ride. It wasn't as good as Sicario, but it was a lot of fun, and it was better than, I think, Star Wars 7 through 9.
Fair. Yeah.
I am so confused by the references and ratings that why are you referencing this to Sicario and Star Wars?
Well, he directed Sicario.
Okay, but it feels
40
like you're putting it somewhere between Sicario and Star Wars.
And
in
then
your
40
rating.
minutes into the film, the person sitting next to me said, I wanted to see Denny V direct a Star Wars.
Okay.
It's a point I would make, later. But yes.
That's why. And it's also a sci-fi epic about a hero's journey, so I think it's fair to compare it to Star Wars.
I was thinking
It's-
more from like a franchise, like we were talking about how this could be a franchise like Star Wars or something like that. I felt like that was more the comparison he was making.
Okay.
You just watch Rewind Theater. You understand my rating system. Very consistent.
Okay. We're fine. You're cool. I get it now.
All right, so
If
Mike,
it's green, you got to be mean. That's the system.
yeah, that's a good rule of thumb for him. Mike, general thoughts on the movie? What'd you think?
I enjoyed it. I really wanted them to greenlight the sequel for it. Coming off of the end of it, I just kind of opened up and said, like, when are we getting the next part? And at the time I had finished watching it, there was no information about when that was happening or if it was happening. It was something that was kind of up in the air. Like, there is no confirmed sequel yet, which was kind of like, oh, crap, that sucks. And then, of course, since that has changed. But, yeah, generally very good.
Andy, what'd you think?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was a very brooding movie. I thought there were a lot of slow parts, but the slow parts were methodical and they were all, in my opinion, needed.
Yeah,
But I could see someone who was like vaguely interested in it being like bored.
yeah,
I get like
You
that.
know, like I really wanted to see it. So like the slow, like methodical brooding moments I thought were really cool because it sort of like built and like added to some suspense and stuff. So, but
I almost feel like it's starting to get like Denny V's MO, at least the last couple movies he's done. Like you think about like Arrival and Blade Runner, and they're both very slow burn movies. Like the story isn't action packed the whole way through. It definitely steadily builds to stuff, and there's a lot of setup in the beginning. And I obviously have liked those two movies enough to put them at the top of my list. This is another one I enjoyed a lot. And it is, 2 hours and 40 minutes ish, something like that. So if it doesn't feel that way when you're watching it, the movie succeeds. If you're looking at your watch halfway through this, then you start to feel the weight of the time, and I don't think it's probably holding your attention as much as maybe you'd think. But I was in it the whole time. I think it's visually stunning, which we can get into, and Denny V is a director that for me is somebody that I'm really curious what he does next, and will continue to check out his catalog because I think he's a director that's really impressed me over the last 5 years. I don't know, anything else to add generally, or we'll get into just spoilers and dive in. Nothing? All right. So we're gonna get into some spoilers. If you have not watched Dune and do not want spoiled, pause us now. Go watch the film, either in theaters or HBO Max, and then come back to us afterwards. Either way, spoilers to follow. This is your last warning.
Wee-oo, spoiler! Wee-oo, spoiler!
You know, something like that.
All right, so we are in spoiler territory. Typically, the way we do this is we at least our reviews recently, we've tried to divide into 3 categories. So we have a direction story category, actors and characters category, and then whatever else we want to talk about is our 3rd category. So we'll try to stick to those and try to keep our discussions in there to try to keep it moving, and we'll see how we do. Before we actually get into that, I will add to this thing we were talking about earlier, the series for HBO Max. Somebody, I don't know, Mike, was that you that sent that? Somebody found an article? Yeah. That confirms there is a straight-to-series show for HBO Max centered around the sisterhood. It was supposed to be...
Coward.
They didn't list... I couldn't remember the name, and they didn't list it immediately in the article for me to read it. What is it, Bene Gesserit? Something like that? Is that the name of it?
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
Sure.
Sure, I'll take it. John Spaeth was supposed to run the series. He was one of the writers for the screenplay of the movie. He stepped away to continue writing the script for the second movie. So, who else? Diane Adamu John has boarded the role of writer, showrunner, and executive producer. She is taking over for John Spaeth. Denny V is attached to direct the pilot. They list a bunch of other names. I can come back to that maybe later. But either way, Andy, you are correct. There is a series coming. I don't think this lists a date that the series is happening, but it is in the works and is at least getting a first season.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it had any connection whatsoever to the story of Dune, but it will at least give a little bit of insight to the Bene Gesserit, which affects quite a bit of what happens in Dune. So
yeah, I feel like it would work good as like a prequel series, something that would set up the events of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and see when that happens, if we get any more word on what's going on with that series. All right, so we'll start with just direction and story for our category. Mike, do you want to kick us off for direction and story? Anything you want to chime in with?
Sure. I'm gonna kind of lean more into the story. There's a lot to say about the direction, but I think there's important things to note about the story of Dune that we're following here, and I feel like they're playing more into and taking the story, I guess, more seriously than the previous movie did. But you know, there's an allegory within the story of Dune, about colonialism and about what happened with Western culture taking over the land from the Native Americans and the, you know, essential genocide that went on there. And they're touching on all these things appropriately in this movie to represent what they were doing. You know, it's something that, like, I recommend looking into it and getting full breakdowns on everything. Frank Herbert, when he was writing the book, had consulted with Native Americans about lots of things before writing it. And, you know, it's that whole fertile land that the rest of the world, I guess, or universe in the case of Dune, needs. And taking it at any cost for the better of the progress, if you will. I find that to be so well done in the case of Dune, in trying to make that political statement, that important perspective, I guess is a good way to put it, on how things happened and using Dune to tell that story. and the fact that this movie is not shying away from that one bit. We get that from the Baron, where, it's like, oh, and what do we do? What are they called? The natives to Arrakis?
Fremen.
You both said it differently.
Well, no, because it's Fremen, but it's free men.
Right.
Like, it's very on. There's not a lot of hidden in the names in this.
That's a fair point. But we get that, and he talks to, as strange as it is, the character's name is Beast. Batista's character's name. Talks to Beast about it and says, like, kill them all. Exterminate them, basically. And, they're not shying away from the themes the way that again, it's been a long time since I watched that old movie. I feel like that old movie didn't really care about those themes.
Right, okay.
So I give them a lot of credit. I think they did extremely well with it and representing it. My only issue with this story is we still have to view this as one movie. And as one movie, it ends in kind of an awkward place. Where it didn't feel like that was an ending to a single movie. And I feel like, we discussed it before kind of many times about how the Hobbit movies did that up until the last one, where they ended and it was like, oh, that's okay, we're just stopping there.
Yeah.
I don't feel it was as bad as that by any means, but it still has that caveat of it. I don't know if it could have picked a better place to end, or what it could have done better to meet that ending and the time limit that they wanted and all that. I'm not sure. But it gives you a look forward throughout the rest of the movie at what's coming, through Paul's visions.
Yeah.
We get a lot of foreshadowing towards what's coming, and I feel like that helps this movie end better as a part one than, I guess, the other example we have, really, the only one I can think of is The Hobbit, that's taking it from a book and cutting it into several movies, where the book didn't end here. That's not where the book ends.
Yeah.
So it puts them in a strange spot where they're trying to tell that whole story from the book, and they're having to choose an ending point for a first movie, where there wasn't an ending point in the book. It wasn't a complete story at that point. But I think they did a much better job of it than those movies did. Yeah. So it's still awkward, but they did good for what they had to work with in those terms.
Yeah, when the title card comes up and says part one, I still would have liked to have a little bit more of a complete story, or at least some sort of kind of conclusion, I guess, going forward. But yeah, I kind of felt like, okay, I knew we were in the theater for a while. It's got to be coming up to an end, and it just kind of just feels like it just ends. Like the story is meant to continue, and we're just done. Fade to black. What? Okay. But again, I guess that sort of just comes with, hey, this is part one, so we're just gonna end. The story
did end, though. That's how I feel about it. Like, the Atreides rule on Dune ended. It's over. That's the end. And then it went on a little bit longer, so it wouldn't have the Empire Strikes Back down endings thing to set up. Here's what's coming next. So Chalamet joins the Fremen, and the beast animal Batista is coming to rule with an iron fist.
So I think I caught it the second time. Watching it at home, I think it made a little bit more sense to me why it ended there. Part one, I think, is the death of Paul Atreides. Like, I think the visions you're seeing that he's getting in his the foreshadowing Mike was talking about is they keep I can't remember the name that they call him, but some sort of messiah or something for the planet, and everybody that seems like they come across him, they keep saying you're not him yet. And leading up to that final third act fight with the Furman guy that challenges him, there's some dialogue there that I don't think maybe I didn't hear it well enough in the theater, but basically saying like you have to die to rise and become who you're meant to be. So the moment he kills that guy, Paul Atreides dies, and he is now starting to fulfill his destiny as the guy that is going to be their savior.
And I think
is the way I'm interpreting it.
That's done a lot better in the book because they don't show it in the movie. But Paul cries over that man's body when he kills him, because it affects him that much, killing
Right.
someone. And at that point too, I think they also established this part more in the book better. He knows how valuable water is and how much of a thing crying is, like showing that deep sorrow because he's losing that water.
Right.
Like it's
Okay.
much more powerful, I think, established how valuable water is in the
Yeah.
books.
Okay. Um, Andy, what do you think? You got anything to add for? I guess we'll just spin in with story. Anything?
The I had difficulty trying to um determine what the scenes of Paul's visions were trying to tell me. I feel like I need to do a rewatch maybe to determine some of like the foreshadowing that was actually happening, because I think a lot of the foreshadowing, or at least some of it, is stuff that we still have yet to see, really. So they're foreshadowing things for maybe like the second part.
And maybe you guys can, because I'm on the same page kind of as Andy a little bit too. Maybe somebody can explain this to me. Part of his visions, I feel like, and especially near the end, the scene we're talking about where he fights the guy and kills the guy. Prior to that fight, he's starting to have visions of who I think is that same guy, and the visions he's
Who's
having.
like, yeah, teaching him the ways of the desert. And
Right.
I'm like,
so this is the guy he kills that is in his visions is supposed to teach him stuff that he's supposed to learn to survive the desert and be one with the people and stuff like that. So I don't know if I'm missing something or if there are literally like two competing visions happening to Paul at the same time. One where he succeeds and helps be the Messiah, and one where somehow Zendaya betrays him and kills him. Like, I don't know if that's part of the same vision, if that's a different vision. The vision still kind of confused me, like Andy said.
Have you ever heard of a little movie called Terminator Genesis? We're using a diversion timeline scenario with the visions. They're unlike Star Wars, there's not one way this can go. This story has multiple paths, and that's what the visions are showing us.
But are they going to lead to the same way, or do they
No,
all end up the same, or they go different places?
No, that's the whole movie is about choice and like what different choices can lead to, and Paul like accepting those choices, like the Ben Gesserit lady, the big matriarch lady,
Right.
Says that he might not be the one, right?
Yeah.
And that's all going to come down to how he performs, because it doesn't matter. If he fulfills the role well enough, then he's the one. It's not like Anakin the one, where there's one person preordained for it. There's a one who's just the person that rises to the occasion.
And I like that they alluded to basically having a backup plan, which I'm assuming is Poe's mom's yet to be born kid.
It could be. I mean, it could be like the movie and the books focus so much on 4 planets, like three family: the Fremen, the Harkonians, the Atreides, and the Emperor. Right?
Okay.
Those are like what we're presented as the only thing that matters. But this is a galaxy expanding empire. There's so many other ones in the world that could, in the galaxy. So like to think of it in that narrow scope of it has to be an Atreides is not what they mean. They mean there's so many people,
Gotcha. Okay.
It's limitless. Like my favorite movie, Limitless.
Today I learned that's Ian's favorite movie.
It'll be different in about 10 minutes.
That's already in the Christmas list.
So the vision that Paul has of the Fremen teaching him the ways of the desert, I feel like actually came true, but not in the way that his vision played it out to be.
Mm-hmm.
The duel with him in the desert taught Paul everything he needed to know about the desert by that man's sacrifice.
And cut with that vision too. You're seeing a lot of characters with bloods on their hands and like saying he's got to get dirty.
Yeah. So I mean, it didn't play out like his vision played it out to be like he was literally gonna like take him by his hand and like show him what to do. But if you watch the fight, the duel, he goads Paul, like he knows Paul has to kill him, and he knows he's capable of doing it because I mean he had the knife in his throat 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And he just kept like screaming at him. So that guy knew when he was fighting him that he needed to make sure that he knew what he was doing.
Well, I think it was less that and more that guy was just angry that he was being toyed with by a child.
I got a little bit of sense of that too.
Like, I don't think that guy was like, I'm sacrificing myself for this kid. He was more like, fucking finish me. Like, there's no, like, maybe he was teaching him there's no sympathy in the desert, but he wasn't trying to teach him this whole mystical lifestyle of desert life, you know? It was more frustration with being treated like like a not a man there.
Like Rorschach yelling at Dr. Manhattan to kill him at the end of Watchmen.
I'd say it's more akin to that, yeah.
I kind of feel like too, and maybe I think it's something I picked up on the second viewing, but along with that same vision that Paul was having, I think he envisions the fight too, doesn't he? Like, I feel like he sees a version of that fight where he dies.
Yeah.
So when I watched it the second time, when he gets to that fight, I think it's almost like he knows what this guy's going to do, so he can predict movements and win the fight because he knows how he's going to kill him.
I mean, I think you could take it from that angle. I think just another way to think about it, though, is like what you were saying earlier, where the visions are saying, you know, like you have to die, but it's not a literal death. It's like a death of that phase of his life.
Gotcha.
And that's what has to happen. His visions aren't like those super clear visions we're used to, I think, in a lot of things where literal thing being shown is what occurs.
So they're all metaphors.
More
all the visions are
messages,
metaphors.
or you have to interpret them. Like, that's part of the whole thing with the testing him and stuff. It's he has to make the right choices. It's a series of choices.
Right. So that Fremen, in my opinion, knew who Paul was supposed to be. He knew that I can't remember what the great sandworm's name was, that just sort of like stared at Paul and like closed its mouth and just like accepted him, really, kind of. That man that he dueled with said, "Oh, my thumper saved him. My thumper saved him." But the thumper didn't start thumping until like the sandworm's mouth was closed, or like his intake hole. I don't know what you fucking call that.
Intake hole.
Face hole.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, his goading Paul was less of him being frustrated and more of him basically proving Paul has a substantial chance to be said Messiah.
Well, and I think it's partially like he can't let Paul win. You know, in that circumstance, he has to actually test him. Like, if this dude is the Messiah, he's going to kill me. He's going to kill me. And he has to learn that harshness of the world in order to know enough to be the Messiah. I guess could be that character's thinking. Could be that, the motivation there. And I honestly think it's a little bit of both. I think the reason for the fight is more in line with what you're saying, Andy. Like, he wants to fight him, and he's going to do it because of that. And then I think the frustration and all that is actually more in line with what Ian was saying, where it's like, this is just a child, but this Messiah is weak and doesn't want to kill me, kind of thing. Like, maybe he's not, and I'm pissed off that I still got beat because it's a weak child that just beat me that's not the Messiah, and I'm just that pissed.
And I think another reason they don't touch on it, I think, early enough is like part of the reason for the challenge is they mention at the end, like, one goes out, one comes in. The Fremen really only have enough water to support their current population numbers. So by taking in Paul and his mother, like, two people kind of have to die or leave. So by him, that man dying, that lets Paul come in, and now the mother's less of a burden on everyone else. Like, that's
I don't
part
think
of it
I
too.
interpreted that, but that makes complete sense.
They
I'm glad
mentioned
you
it
explained
like
that to me.
the leader guy that they let them in originally.
Yeah.
That guy, he mentions it very briefly, like that rule, one in, one out. But that's the only mention of it in the books. Part of it's, you can linger on the words, but like also it's brought. It's the scarcity of water is much more heavily enforced in the book. I'm assuming with the movie, part of it's like, do you see any fucking water? No, it's important.
I mean,
they
do make
it a point to talk about all the recycled water and how everything works to get the water back. But to your point, I never got the urgency of like, oh, they're out of water now. Or like they desperately need water. I never got that sense.
Like, yeah, they put on the still suits, but I don't think it was established the dire straits they would be in without. I don't think that had enough whatever the word is. But like,
Emphasis.
Emphasis.
I don't think that's correct. But like Mike said though,
Trying to help
like,
you out, asshole.
having the suits themselves and stuff like showed the scarcity of water, but I think they could have enforced it a little more, especially in this length of movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And perhaps when they get into what were the tunnels or the underground, whatever, they had a name for it.
Are they like SIAX? Something
Some-
like
I don't
Something like
remember.
that. I think maybe when we get
Seeks?
there,
Seeks?
that. Seeks.
whatever they're called, I think when
CCs.
we get there in the second movie, that we may get that emphasis that you're getting at. We may understand better once we see their society in a more complete fashion than just like a band of desert wandering people. When we see them in a larger group, it may be more apparent how dire the need for water is.
Yeah.
See it being rationed out. You know what I mean? Maybe not wasted the way it was in Mad Max, but
One of the other things for me, just for story, that I made more sense on a second viewing. But I think a first time in, just trying to get a sense of this world, and they start throwing all these different factions at you, and you're trying to figure out what faction is doing what and why. I got lost a little bit on the first viewing.
No, I mean, and that's understandable. You're the man who couldn't tell the difference between, hey, there's only 3 sections in Ghost in the Shell, and you didn't know any of them. So I'm not surprised that them throwing multiple factions at you confused you on your first viewing. They threw out more than 2 things. But I think what they established
Fair
were
point.
very clearly, and the book, again, it's not as clear cut, but it's very established, I think, in this film. Atreides good, Harkonian bad, and there's no gray.
I got
It's
that
very
much.
clear.
Yeah.
But I also think it was something along the lines of like the Harkonnens were corrupted by the wealth. They, I mean, like they were given the opportunity to be the tenders, or what would be a better term for that?
The colonists.
No, not the colonists. Like, yeah, they're colonists, but I'm saying like they were chosen not to be the colonists. They were chosen to be like the
Didn't he use the term fief in the fiefdom?
yeah, the thing like that where they're chosen to be the people to distribute the spice out to the galaxy, and through gaining that wealth, it started to turn them. I felt. I don't feel like they were evil and then chosen because they were evil to go and do it. I feel like they became evil through the process of
Possibly,
thousands
but
of years, supposedly, or
no.
however long it was they had control.
100 years.
Well, I mean, that's a long enough time.
I mean, that's only like 3 rulers.
That's a long enough time.
I don't think you go from blah, 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 we're fun, cozy Ewoks to
We're not saying they're
bloodthirsty
fun,
murderers in 100 years.
We're not saying they're fun, cozy Ewoks here. They're normal people that have good and bad in them at one time, and over the course of 100 years, their society became so enveloped in the spice that it turned them into people that only cared about that and would kill anything in their way to protect it.
I take them more as a family that is already bad, and then the wealth allows them to be worse, because they now have the power to back up those that feelings of the nature of the families. And I think that kind of goes in with the fact that we're talking about large houses of families, that it's kind of more of a cultural thing than kind of slow bleeding, turning the wealth makes us worse and worse. It's to first get that option, like for the emperor to pick them to rule the most important planet in the galaxy. They probably already had some ruthlessness to them, I would think.
Sure. Again, I said they're not perfect people going into this. I just think it made them worse over that time period. Yeah, I mean, like it's just like money corrupts. Absolutely, that's a thing.
I mean, to Ian's point, I'm sort of,
Power.
I guess, maybe siding more with
Corrupts
Ian,
all.
that they were, I feel like they were, at least I'm interpreting it, that they were just bad to begin with. And to your point, Mike, I think they did get worse, but I think they were never like, hey, we're going to see if this works and see if we can figure this place out and govern fairly. No, I think they were shit from the start.
But at the same time, over the course of 100 years, they also didn't commit the genocide that they now intend to commit. So, like, I would say that's, when we're talking about genocide, you're talking about a steep turn from we're going to, rule over this planet and tell people what we're going to do with their resources to we're just going to fucking kill every living thing. It's a very
I mean,
different. They're both bad things,
yeah.
but it's it's like robbery and murder. It's you're not good for doing either, but it takes a very darker turn when you get to the second.
Yeah. Anything else for story from anybody, or we'll sort of spin the direction and see what you guys thought of direction.
I thought we were doing both at the same time.
I mean, kind of, but we've been leaning into story.
I enjoyed the story of the doctor.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who was really very much on the Atreides side and left as much. I don't know if you would call them. Oh God, I don't know what you would call them, but he left them all sorts of like
a go bag.
Yeah. He set them up the best way he could, knowing that he had to betray them for the love of his life. If that makes any sense.
I mean, I thought that was the weakest part of the film for me, because the doctor is basically in that one small scene checking out Paul beforehand, and then he's the betrayer. Like, part of the thing they cut out from the book is the suspicion building up of who is everyone knows there's a betrayer in the walls, but we don't know who it is, and there's a buildup of that. But in this, it's more like, okay, I'm the doctor, I betrayed you. Like, I don't care that he did it, because you don't establish the character enough to care about his falling,
Yeah,
It's just, hey, your heart rate's good. I killed your dad! It's like, hey, there's no transition there, and I think that hurts the film in that regard. I think it could have worked as anyone could have had that. It could have been an unseen person, and it would have had as much impact. The only characters that would have had more impact would have been Momoa or Brolin. Those are characters we spent a lot more time with, and that would have had an impact. Not that they should have done that, but if we wanted to have that moment have a real to it, it needs to be someone that has more than 4 lines of dialogue.
Yeah, I agree. I did like that, and I caught it more the second viewing, but when Paul and his mom were captured on the ship, the doctor must have marked up the seat, put that little diamond on the seat, and then snuck the bag underneath the seat, which, as the scenes go on and they're in the desert and they unravel all this stuff, and then Paul says, oh, this is from the doctor, I think I put 2 and 2 together at that point, but the second time through I was like, oh, he was leaving them signals the whole way out.
Yeah, he was sort of like breadcrumbing it, or Easter egging, they just kept following, oh, okay, he didn't, in my opinion, he was trying to let them know that he didn't want to do what he was doing. He was trying to help them out as much as he possibly could, even though he had to eventually betray them.
Yeah.
And then it just goes into I get why it has to happen, because it moves the story, but I always hate in books when someone goes to the very evil people and then betrays someone thinking that they won't themselves be punished anyways.
Right. Yeah.
You never make it, unless it's a Turtles film, you're not making it out alive, because the Turtles are poorly written. But, that's of course he meant I'll, can join your wife by killing you. Duh. Have you seen that man? Look at him.
I think it's one of the, I think it was well done, but also one of the weaker plot points, because it's very much something that's put in there very, I don't want to say haphazard, but it's the only word that's coming to mind. So we'll say haphazardly, where it fits in and it plugs this gap that seems like it was unneeded. And when I say unneeded, it's why would they tell him? Was it that he was assigned to assassinate? What was the name of the House Atreides leader? The Duke?
Duke Leto.
Okay. So he's given this task of, oh, we'll get you back with your wife if you assassinate Duke Leto, or deliver us Duke Leto, or whatever. But it seemed from what they did, it didn't really matter whether or not that guy had done that or not. They would have done the same thing that they had just done. Like the Harkonnens would have came in, they would have taken over, they would have captured Duke Leto anyways.
Well, it wasn't just that. He's the one that opened like the shields and sabotaged like the base and stuff.
Yeah, but I'm saying like, why was killing the Duke part of it?
Well, he didn't.
Why
kill
did they
the
need
Duke,
him?
though.
Yeah, no, but you know what I mean. But why did that need to be?
Well, I think just to make sure he didn't die, like to preserve him for the, the gloating. Just so you don't risk someone killing him in
Okay.
the attack. You got him for the
Okay.
gloating.
That yeah, all right.
It's that sadistic
I
nature
can-
of the Harkonians.
I can buy that. All right, that's fair.
Well, I think, to Ian's point, too, they needed a saboteur inside. Like, frontal
No,
assault.
The sabotaging I got.
Yeah.
It was the assassination that I didn't get.
Okay.
That's all. Like, why it did like other than just wanting to gloat, I'll accept that, because other than that, it doesn't matter whether the Duke's dead or alive. When
Right.
they invade. He's dead. He's alive. Whatever. We still took over.
Yeah, because I guess the Baron makes it a point to tell him, like, your house is dead, your son and wife are dead, like, everything you care about is destroyed because of me. So I think, yeah, it was more gloating thing. Yeah, I could buy that. I do want to make sure we just get into direction. So just to hit the category, Ian, what do you think of direction?
I don't think there was a single shot of the film where I was like, I think someone should have done that differently. I thought everything was like just really well put together. Like, every shot I think had a reason for why they chose like the angle or the camp, all of that stuff. It was just really beautiful. And I think part of it also goes into just the effects. There was so much in this book that's considered unfilmable. And they put nearly all of that in this movie. And they filmed it, and it wasn't weird. Like, the shields worked. The Firefly, like, ships made sense. That wasn't weird.
One of my favorite parts of the film is those Firefly ships. I think they look amazing.
The worms, like, were awesome.
They're more dragonflies, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, the worms are like imagine a Sarlacc pit that doesn't suck, and that's what these worms are. Like, they were fucking awesome and majestic and creepy and weird. It really worked. There was nearly nothing where I was like, this was cut, but they couldn't do it. There was like there's one thing I can think of that was cut because clearly Denny couldn't do it, and that's when Paul fucks the worm. That's the only thing. But I think it was masterfully shot. They really did a great job with that. The story, like we've gone over, I think Dune is so bulky in that intrigue and so much inner monologue. That's part of the other inner part that's considers it unfilmable. He did a good job of switching how we learn this information so it's still an entertaining movie. Like, this is one of the quickest 2.5 hours I've sat through in a film. I thought it was amazing, and I'm surprised how good it was, honestly.
Nice. Okay. Mike, what do you think direction-wise?
Ian pretty much hits the nail on the head there. The only like notes I have on it that he didn't mention, something Denny always does great is scale.
Yeah.
Show it, that there's scenes in Arrival, there's scenes in Blade Runner, there's scenes in this where you get that scale of something giant next to something small, and you say, "Holy crap, that looks right."
Yeah.
The worm with Paul. That was amazing. That shot is that's an iconic shot that's going to be like scorched into your brain for a long time. Really well done there. The location choices for, I guess, the home worlds or places or whatever you like of the different houses touched so well on what they should have.
Yeah.
They looked natural. They looked appropriate. They differentiated these people just based on how they treat the land, how they treat everything, how they approach life. The Atreides come from this very rich, lush planet with their own resources all over the place. They have no worry about water or food or any of this because of where they live. The Harkonnens, it's a very dark, dreary, drab, technological kind of looking place. And then, of course, Arrakis is Arrakis. It's a desert.
It's a Dune.
All All right, he got it in. But you get my point. The worlds, I think, are very well represented here in their contrast from one another. And I think that's very important to see how these people are different and why they're so different. And the last one I have is that Arrakis is filmed so well it's disturbingly empty, but still it's somehow full at the same time. There's things going on while it still feels empty because it's a desert. But there's still life. There's still... It looks like there's more to it than there is because of the way it's shot.
Yeah, I agree. Andy, anything for direction you want to chime in with?
I enjoyed the pacing. I know I said at the beginning that I thought it was like a slow, brooding, and methodical movie, but I feel like he flips a switch very right when the betrayal happens. He just like flips a switch, and then the action sequence just like takes off, and just like it's over in what feels like an instant because there's so much happening, but he does it so well.
Yeah.
You know, that whole battle sequence is just like, I felt like, wow, they are just like annihilating like the Atreides, like, but I don't know, I felt like he switched it in a way that usually bugs me, like it's like slow brooding kind of movie, and then all of a sudden like an action sequence, and then it kind of gets a little bit brooding again. I felt like he did a good job of like flipping the switch and like changing the pacing during those moments.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that. Usually that kind of annoys me when they sort of change the pacing of a movie like mid-movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I am probably gonna echo a lot of what these guys said. Like Andy said, I think that Denny V directs action very well. I never felt like I was confused about what was happening. There's no shaky cam and all the other like action movie editing tropes that I hate in this. I think everything was really well shot. It's visually stunning. Like, Denny V has a way just to suck you into these worlds that he creates, and like you're in it. Like Blade Runner did that to me. Like Arrival did that to me. Not that Arrival is much of a stretch because it's still sort of like modern day. There's just like aliens and shit in it. But Blade Runner is another one that like you're just in the world when it starts. Like, he has a knack for, maybe world building is a word to use, but like the movie starts, you get a sense of like what else is going on in the universe, and you're just kind of in the story and locked in the whole time. And there's not a lot of movies and directors that I feel like can do that to me, which is another reason why I just feel like this dude needs a fucking Star Wars movie, because that's the kind of feeling I get from Star Wars movies, is you're in this world that has all this other shit going on. You're seeing a section of a story. So let's play with something else and see what else is going on. Tell me another side of the story. Like, there's just so much that can go on there that I'd like to see. And there's a lot of shots that I felt like would have fit right at home with some Star Wars aesthetic. Like some of when the Bene Gesserit shows up at night in the rain with all these ladies in these dark cloaks with hoods on. Like, I got Jedi vibes from all that stuff. Like, I want to see stuff like that from him. So
the twin sons.
That too. Yeah. It's so heavy in sci-fi, and Denny V's nailing sci-fi. Like, I fucking love it. I do feel like it's worth pointing out, like, shout out to the cinematographer who probably helped him frame some of these shots. I think it's Greg Fraser.
Was that the same guy from Blade Runner?
No, I think Blade Runner was Roger Deakins, I think. If I'm remembering. I didn't look up who the Blade Runner cinematographer was, but Greg Fraser did Lion, which I think was Academy Award nominated, if not won. Rogue One, he did Adam McKay's Vice. He did a few episodes for The Mandalorian. We'll be seen again more recently next year with Matt Reeves' The Batman.
Never heard of it.
I feel like you have. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I need to touch on for direction. That might have been one of the shots, like Andy was talking, or Andy or Mike, I think, was talking about how I think it was Mike, the sandworm shot of like Paul looking at the sandworm and stuff like that. There's a couple other sequences to me that stood out, like all the stuff with the big battle when they get invaded and all the ships are trying to lift off and all the explosions are happening. Like, just the way the bombs worked, I thought was really cool. And like I said, I think I liked the way the Dragonfly ships worked. Like, I don't feel like I've seen a lot of ships in sci-fi look and feel like that. Like, even it's probably part of like the design and sound effects and like everything coming together, but like you just get a sense of how the ships work and the weight that's with them and all that kind of crap just from the way they sound and move. And the one shot that sticks with me is when they're looking over the spice miner thing that's out in the desert before it gets attacked by the sandworm, and they decide they're going to go in and try to save the crew. There's music there, they're hovering, and then the music dies, the engine cuts for the engine, and he just dives in, and you're just with them inside the ship as it's like the wind's blasting by and they're swooping in. Like, that shot alone is like, come on, that's fucking great. I love that. But I feel like I could just rave about Denny V for a while, so I will let someone else take over if you have anything else to add.
I think the last thing I want to add is you mentioned it with the worm and Paul. I think there were a lot of good shots just when Paul has to do some type of facial thing to another person that just were done really well to bring out that emotion that Chalamet was trying to show, even though he doesn't always have more than one emotion in this film. But when he has to do a face to like convey something, they did a good job of framing it so that it's like impactful like it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, like thinking on it, I feel like there was angst and confusion. That was about the two that I remember seeing.
That's about 2 hours of it, yes.
Yeah.
Sounds about right for a teenage kid that's thrust into leadership.
Yeah.
And also super rich.
That too. Anything else to add for direction?
I thought he got good performances out of all of his actors.
Well, it's probably a good time. We'll spin into characters and actors and go from there and see what you guys think. So, Andy, take it from there. Just characters and actors, anybody specific you want to talk about for performances or anything?
I'd like to talk about Jason Momoa's role.
Okay.
He was really good in this movie, I thought. Sometimes I get like sort of like the bro don't care like surfer kind of vibe from him, you know, but I feel like he didn't do that in this.
Yeah.
I credit that to Denny V for not letting him do that in this. You know, I liked his whole arc, and I really enjoyed this scene where he frees Paul and his mother from being caught again. I thought that was like his Boromir moment.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck
Even
Boromir.
though like he didn't really like have to, like Boromir, you know, obviously like tried to catch Frodo and like sort of owed a little bit, but I feel like Momoa didn't really owe anything, but he still like made the ultimate sacrifice.
Right,
so that
right.
They could be free.
Anybody else stand out to you?
I really enjoyed the Harkonnen Baron, which I think was
Skarsgård.
Skarsgård. Yeah, I thought he was really good and sort of gross, you know. And I
Intentionally.
think he did a pretty good job of that. I thought whatever was on his back that made him float was pretty cool. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I know sort of blending like actors and characters, but I'm not sure like what those are for people who've read the book.
They just call it a
shed some
harness.
light. Okay. And it just like allows.
Yeah, that's part of it too. Is like in the book, it's kind of. I actually thought it was a full-on harness system in my head. This makes a lot more sense and is a lot more visually stunning than what I was imagining. Where it was like kind of like what are the like overall kind of like look thing holding him up that then had like jet propellers on the side. And then the film's a lot cooler than what I had imagined when I read the book.
Is it just meant to be like he's too big to move himself, so
Yes,
it just
he
helps him get
literally
around?
is so engorged that he can no longer move comfortably.
Okay. All right.
Okay. I thought Oscar Isaac was awesome. I really enjoyed his talk with Paul on the I'm assuming the ceremonial burial grounds of the Atreides,
Yeah, yeah.
like where his grandfather was and stuff. I really enjoyed like the heart to heart he had with Paul. He's like, "You'll only ever be what I need you to be, my son."
Yeah.
Like I feel like that like lifted weight off of Paul. Like he didn't like put all of his family's burdens on him. Like even if you don't take it, you're still my son.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that little like moment of honesty between like father and son.
Yeah.
I'll let someone else run.
Mike, anybody stood out to you?
I can't not speak for Josh in this moment and bring up David Dastmalchian and how perfectly he fit into that small role that they gave him. You're welcome, Josh. I mentioned it. That's as far as I'm going for now on that, because he doesn't really do much. There's not a lot really to say there.
He gets gassed.
Yeah, like he's there. He's great. But when I was taking notes for the role, I feel like they did so well casting, because I look at everybody they chose and I think to myself, like, have I ever seen that person not perform, incredibly well?
Yeah.
And Jason Momoa is the only one where I could say, like, yeah, I've seen him not perform. Like I've seen Joss Whedon's Justice League. I've seen that, so I can say that. But everybody else there, I mean, maybe Javier Bardem in the one Pirates movie, but even then he was still pretty good.
Yeah.
But I guess like the standouts to me would be Timothée Chalamet being my first time actually seeing him in something. I don't know what else he's been in. I have no idea. I learned today that not today, but when I watched it, I learned that he's quite a good actor. He did very well here. And Rebecca Ferguson, this is, I think, maybe the second time I've seen her. The first being in Dr. Sleep. And she was fantastic there. She was pretty damn good here, too. I feel like she kind of fell in, not as badly as Zendaya did, but into a category of could have had more to do. But I feel like that's just story related, and she'll have more to do later. Like she had a lot more than Zendaya did here. Zendaya was there, but
I feel like she's going to be a lot of part 2.
Yeah, absolutely. But I feel like there's nothing I can say about her performance in this, because there's not really anything there to go on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other than that, everybody was as good as you would expect. That there was not really any dud performances here.
Yeah. Being anybody stood out to you? What do you think?
So Jason Momoa has so much charisma. I think some people might think he's the real main character of the film. He blows away Chalamet in the charisma and acting department that it's almost like I kind of would rather watch this movie about him. Like, he's really good at that, being like awesome.
The Duncan Idaho spinoff.
Mm-hmm. Like, and he had like the only good joke in the movie. So that was, like also it, like he's the only one that could deliver a joke.
So what was the one good joke?
There was only one joke, and it was when he says to Chalamet, "Oh, you put on some muscle," and Chalamet says, "Really?" And he's like, "No."
Okay, all right.
What did you think the joke was?
No, I didn't know if there was more than that one. That was the only one I could think of too. That was all over the trailers and stuff. So,
I think Oscar Isaac is, like we've mentioned, he's fantastic in the role. He looks much better with a beard than he does without. He should never shave. Skarsgård pulled off, I think, the Baron. He was intimidating. He felt ruthless. Maybe not as, I think, as like a Thrawn type character with like the ultimate game plan. It was more like I just have overwhelming resources to carry out my devious plans, rather than like some brilliant strategist, which was fine. Batista just stands out too much because I know it's Batista for me to ever buy him in a role. Like it's just very like that's Batista. He's mad and he's screaming. So it's not that he did bad. It's just like it pulls. It's always weird just when they try and give him something because it's Batista.
To be fair, isn't that kind of the role though?
But that's all of his roles, so I don't know.
Yeah, no, but I mean, we talked about it. His character's literally called Beast. It's the character's name, so it's like.
I'm not saying he did that poorly. It's just like it's not just that he yells and screams. It's just that's clearly Dave Bautista. There's never a doubt that the person I am looking at is Dave Bautista. He never gets enough into the role that I forget that I'm watching Dave Bautista.
Okay.
That's what I mean more.
I see what you're saying. I got you.
I got you. Yeah, I get it.
I didn't realize that was Oscar Isaac for a while. I thought he was really in the character. I was like, that's Duke Leto. I don't know who else that could possibly be. Josh Brolin did phenomenally, I think. I think he did a good job of being kind of that mentor that Chalamet didn't want because it's not his bro Duncan broing down with him. But like bringing like that extra energy out of him of like, hey, are you fucking retarded? Like, there's a bunch of people about to kill you, bro. Like,
Yeah.
try. I thought Zendaya did really well narrating. Yeah, Andy?
I figured since you mentioned him, I just sort of wanted to get into his character a little bit. Did you guys feel that Paul did not care for this guy? Like when he had to train with him, it looked like he was more on edge.
I feel like that's a kind of normal teenage thing for like a boy to be kind of whatever about the aggressive male military type, coach, if you will. I guess in our modern day would be a coach to a kid, to not really understand why the person's so hard on them. And they kind of take that attitude towards them, and then as they grow older and understanding, they learn more about why that person was hard on them. And
so we're talking about
things like
Josh
that.
Brolin, right?
Yeah.
Like training with
Yeah.
Josh Brolin. Okay.
I hope that
yeah,
we were
and-
once you said that, because I was like, wait, and what was
Yeah.
I?
And I get that, but to me, it sort of it goes up a little bit higher level where I feel like Paul almost doesn't trust him.
Well, I think it was like a twofold. Like, one, the guy's being hard at him. Duncan's not there, his bro that normally trains him. And 3, he really wants to go to Arrakis. His mind's not in it. So he's annoyed that not only is he being forced to train because he's not into it, he has to train really hard now all of a sudden. And he's not like there, and he's really on edge about it. And that's why this guy's pushing him to always be there. Like the whole thing he says about don't have your back to a door, once again, is very heavily emphasized in the book as a big fucking deal. And I don't like in the movie it's brought up like that one time.
I feel like as a young boy, it's the same kind of thing. Like you're having these visions of a young girl from another world that has exotic things to discuss with you. Not erotic, exotic. It's that just means different.
No one heard that wrong.
I felt like I got a look. But she's also got drugs, and it's like, hey, come get some spice and some of this, and you're being
Some
called to
rock
this
and
other
roll.
world by your dreams. Yeah, I'd be, if I was a teenage boy, I'd be all amped up to get over there too. Like, I think that's a normal teenage thing. So I feel like you're seeing a little bit of that there.
Okay.
I think it's like the same thing we see with Luke and Lars, where, he just wants to go out and have fun and not do the hard stuff. The not fun stuff.
I think I'm thinking more like Ian. Where at that point in the story, I think Paul's just so annoyed, partially because like he's distracted with visions. His father just said, "No, you can't go with your friend." So he's just told, "You got to stay here and you got to deal with us for a little bit longer, and then you can go." So yeah, I think it's more just he's distracted and annoyed, and his mind is elsewhere, and he just isn't in the mood, not to be trained by Josh Brolin, but to be trained by anybody. I think it's anybody that walks in that door, he's gonna be like, "Fuck you, I don't have time or care about this right now."
But I think then how Brolin treats it with his attitude and his hard nose amps it up like another notch for him.
Right. Yeah. Teen angst is
Like,
just
he
gonna
brings
be
it
like,
out
I don't
a little
fucking
more.
care anymore.
Like, I think to Andy's point, he wouldn't have had such a negative attitude to someone else, but that's just because of Brolin's attitude too in the moment, bringing him up a little higher.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
And last about Brolin's character, did we see him die?
I had a note of that. I was gonna ask that same question because I feel like we didn't see a body, right? He's got to come back.
I mean,
I
did
feel
not see
like
a body.
we did not see a body, and we really didn't like when we got some like overarching explosions near him and whatnot. But I feel like we have not seen the last of him.
Yeah,
But- and
that
that's
was
a
my takeaway
character-
too.
It's a character that he plays so well. Like that type of character that, the military type serious, like just over the top. I don't want to say drill instructor, but like kind of, like not drill instructor, but that, you know, he does really well with that type of character in any type of movie that he's done it in.
Yeah. I don't know if I don't think I chimed in, but I think as far as performances, I think I really don't think there's a bad performance in this movie. I think Mike said the same thing, so I'm bouncing off of his thought. But I think Timothy Chalamet, I think, carried the movie, which is what he needed to do. Skarsgård was just creepily evil, which I enjoyed. Oscar Isaac was great. Rebecca Ferguson was great. Jason Momoa was cool. Josh Brolin, I think, Zendaya, Dave Smolchin, Javier Bardem. I feel like I wanted more from those characters, but there's a lot of characters in this movie, so it's hard to give everybody a right amount of screen time. And obviously, some of these characters we're going to see in part 2, and some of these characters are off the board now in part 1, so which should give more screen time to other people in part 2. So I'm looking forward to some of these characters getting fleshed out in the next part. But for what we're given in this movie, I don't think anybody did bad. I think everything was great. One of the things I'm curious about is like they keep name dropping the Emperor, some unseen Emperor. I'm curious if we'll ever see that character. I don't expect them to be like, I don't know if they'll make an announcement of who is eventually cast as this person, if we're going to see them, or if that's a surprise they're going to save for somewhere in the movie. But maybe Ian, since you're a little bit more familiar with the source material, do they ever cross paths with the Emperor, or is it just someone that's always talked about but never seen?
Just like in my favorite franchise, Star Wars, the Emperor is discussed a lot and is a very central role to the plots, maybe even creating a child that has a vast importance to the story. I think if I was expecting how this would play out, I would expect to see the Emperor show up at some point for some type of confrontation that maybe decides the fate of Arrakis, because it's the most important planet in the known galaxy, and without it there wouldn't be an emperor needed because they wouldn't rule more than a planet.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that was sort of my thought. I'm curious how soon we'd see the Emperor. Like, is the only other question I'm trying to... Not that we have an answer, that's more just, speculatory. But
I mean, if I had to pick someone, not that I think they would be the best in it, but I feel like it's going to be Andy Serkis. So it's going to be all CG.
Just cast Ian McDermott just to get everybody on the same page. Anything else for characters and actors from everybody? Any of you guys? Or we'll move to whatever else we want to touch on.
I felt like sorry.
Go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead, Ian.
Okay. I don't think we mentioned them, but Sharon Duncan Brewster as Dr. Leah Keynes, I think, did phenomenal.
I was just going to say
that. Her character is actually gender swapped in the movie, so it was originally a male. I thought she did really well in the role. She was that original, like, I can't get involved because the Emperor told me not to. And
the judge of the change or whatever that was. Yeah, okay.
That's literally
right.
what it's.
Yeah.
So you knew that, but Section 9, I don't fucking know what that is.
I just watched the movie recently, so that's a little bit more fresh in my mind.
So I thought she did a great role, and like that, her small character arc of the Emperor's gonna fucking kill me if I say anything, to I need to help out Paul because he's the chosen one. I thought that was nice, and I really felt for her. Unlike the other doctor that, betrayed the Atreides, I actually felt for her when she passed in the greatest way possible.
Andy, what'd you have?
I was going to mention her as well as a couple other characters. I really enjoyed the duel with Paul. That gentleman that had the duel with Paul that taught him the ways of the desert. I thought he was really good.
Good choice not saying
very
his name.
limit. I don't know his name.
No, it's really long last name. That's why Brian's gonna look at it and not say it.
Wait, let me just ask: is the
Babs?
character named Jamis?
Yeah.
Or Jamis? So
Babs,
it's okay. So it's Babs.
Ullasanmakin.
Ulus. Yeah. Did you say it, Mike? Yeah, Mike said it. I'll let Mike say it.
Ola Sandmakin.
Yes, that sounds right.
I thought he did a really good job with the very limited amount of screen time that he actually got.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed him.
Maximized his screen time.
Yes, I enjoyed that. I also really liked. I'm not sure what you would call them, but they're almost like human computers.
The Mentats.
The Atreides computer. He was like a little bit bigger gentleman with like a white beard.
The security guard type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they always have like a tattoo on their lower lip,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
like both lips, like right in the middle there. And I think was it Desmalchin that played the guy for the Harkonnen?
Mm-hmm.
He was also that brand of person.
Right.
Um, Speaking of which, I thought it was really cool that there are really no computers in this.
Oh, I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's a good observation.
Like everything is analog, and I think that's really cool. Aside from like I don't know how they do it, but you can tell their eyes like flip back in their head and they like do calculations and communications and stuff like that. But there's really no like we're doing sci-fi, but there's no computers, and I think that's really refreshing a take on it. Because sci-fi is like all about like new technology and whatever, and we get the technology, like we get the starships and the dragonfly ships and all that, but none of them are like you can't like set them to autopilot or any kind of thing like that. And I really thought that was cool.
I want to build off Andy's point there, like about the no computers thing. There's another big thing missing from this universe. There's no entertainment. Like, there's never a point where anyone has like casual downtime and does something entertaining. There's no like books to read, no movies to watch, no one's listening to music. It's just life.
Well, there was the instructional video.
That's not entertainment. That is instructions.
But they have the capacity for...
Oh yeah, they could if their society allowed for it. They could have entertainment. They do not, and I think that kind of shows what kind of society this emperor runs. That no one, even the angsty, rebellious teenager, doesn't have like a Playboy somewhere.
Yeah, there's not dancers in any of the... Even the Harkonnens don't have, like, Jabba's sex slaves around, There's none of that anywhere to be seen. And that it's a very...
totalitarian, like,
Yeah.
brutal, and the architecture's very I think it's called brutal. Like it's a very harsh lifestyle.
Yeah. Empty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just wanted to mention the few I don't know, secondary roles, like outlier type actors that I thought actually really did a pretty good job of like absorbing me into the movie.
I think not that it has to do with characters and actors, but Andy, your point about like no technology or computers or anything like that, even just the battles, like I don't think it occurred to me while watching until now that we're just sort of talking about it, but there's no like laser guns and that kind of thing. Like that's almost synonymous with sci-fi movies.
Right.
Even those bombs were just guided to slow down at the right time.
Right.
They had fins on them to do it that way. It was...
Which, learning the ins and outs of the shield kind of makes sense why there's no projectile weapons, because the shields would block projectiles, and that's why everybody fights hand-to-hand.
Yep. They did. I mean, that would make sense, even in... like, it's something that if the world developed it, that's where it would go.
Yeah.
You can't... There's no way to get a slow bullet through a shield. Like, it doesn't work anymore once it's slow.
The only mention of a gun or any kind of projectile thing was actually Paul stole one from a Freeman.
Right.
Well, and they have those things, like the thing that like goes up and drills its way through.
Yeah.
Which is weird,
almost
but
like a
cool.
Dart. It's like a dart. Yeah, it's almost like a dart.
Yeah, it functions like a bullet, but it doesn't move as fast as a bullet. It just like it attaches and then starts... What did that remind me of?
Wanted. The curving bullets from Wanted.
No, not the curving. No, I'm saying like the drilling through like that. Like reminded me of like, I can't remember what it's from, but there's something where it like sticks and then drills in. Might have been like Hawkeye had an arrow that did that.
Maybe
he's pretty lame.
I can't think.
It was either him or Legolas.
I mean, Legolas didn't have like weird arrow tips and stuff that does weird stuff.
He did in The Hobbit.
Did he?
It was in the books, not the movie. They didn't find time for it in the movie.
I can't. Moving on, because I don't know. I can't call you on your bullshit right now.
He did have time to surf on a shield, though.
All right, so we'll move on. Like, last category is just pretty much anything we didn't touch on that we want to. So anywhere, Andy, you want to start with anything else you want to touch on?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the um, musical turns when there was any sort of large spacecraft on the screen. Like, I feel like the score was going a certain way, and then as soon as you saw like a large spacecraft like landing, taking off, or whatever, it changed the score, and you got this like really awe-inspiring, like awesome music, like you were seeing something like super majestic and rare. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, the soundtrack is definitely something that stuck out to me. Also, I really like the
Yes.
soundtrack. I haven't
Yeah.
made it a point to just like find it on Spotify and start to listen to it, but I definitely will in the next couple days.
Apparently, there's like 3 different ones.
Really?
Yeah, there's 3 different. There's like the atmospheric one. There's like the actual like I think score from Hans Zimmer, and then there's some other one that's weirder and called something different. I can't remember what it was.
Okay.
Battle Hymn
Yeah, I
of
knew
the
the
Republic.
score. I knew Zimmer did the score, so I'm curious to see how that turns out. Like, just listening to the soundtrack, I'm curious.
But I thought the special effects were really pretty awesome. And just like the overall, I think we touched on it before, like the themes of the different houses, I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
I really hope that we get to see more houses like in other parts.
Yeah, flesh out the world a little bit more.
Yeah,
Almost like a galactic senate.
Ian, what stuck out to you? Anything else?
So I think one of my favorite parts, I guess this could have gone in the direction of storytelling in this film, is when Leto says to Paul, you know, Paul says, my granddad was out there fighting boars. He wasn't a coward waiting behind. He was out there fighting boars. And Leto says, bulls, and that's what did him in. And then you see on the gravestone of their granddad him fighting a bull. Like, he died how he lived. You see the bull's head a lot throughout the film. I really just liked that they did say, they just said, they just showed you the tombstone. They got that point across of what happens. That's the part of that, I think, whole choices thing I talked about earlier with that.
Mess
It
with
was
the
2
bull, you
points.
get the horns.
You're right, Andy. There is 2 points. I really like that. And then, like Andy mentioned with the battle scene, I think part of why like the switch is turned on and it goes really fast is part of that's just to show how quickly they took over Acrates. Like, that battle does not last long. There was a thorough ass kicking of a coup, and
Yeah.
that was some of the most awe-inspiring fighting sequences I've seen in maybe ever. Like, it was just desolation. It reminded me back when I was like in 2005, seeing those like night vision videos of when the U.S. was bombing Iraq when we were invading. Like, just sheer devastation and like absolute power overwhelming. Like it felt like not. It felt like that real sense of devastation. It really felt like they are destroying this whole city and everyone involved. And you see the troops come marching in, and it's like they're not having any real trouble forming in. It was that sense of despair, really, I think, got brought through in that moment. Like, they're fucked. This is
Yeah.
Yeah.
This can only go one way.
And they kept trying to give you like glimpses of like Atreides has a little bit of hope, like their line
Mhm.
held up the stairs, and then the guys dropped in behind them, and
It's
they're
like,
like, "Oh nope, yeah, that's still
you're
fucked."
kind of fucked now. There's no chance. And I that movie, it did so many things so well with that battle sequence. That I maybe if anything in this movie, that's the one moment where you have to be in a theater, I think, to see. Maybe that's on that epic scale of the theater that is needed for that moment. But it like I said, like if you could give out Oscars for 4 minutes, that wins all of them for every year going forward. It was honestly just a brilliant piece of filmmaking, and it was great to see it. Other thoughts I had, like I said, they've cut a lot of stuff out with this to fit it in. People don't care about the political intrigue. It's part of the issue people have with the prequel movies is that we learned too much about the Trade Federation and their system of taxation on the galaxy. And this movie skips right past it. Spice is really important. It's the only way we can travel. That's a good house. That's a bad house. The Emperor just wants to make both houses weaker. It cut through it real quick. It established stuff. I think this is one of the films we've had the least amount of why did this plot point occur for like major plot stuff out of some of the films we've watched in the past where I think, and I'm not saying that makes it a bad film, like that it was more simply understood, but I think it effectively told a story that people didn't think it could. I thought it was really well done, and honestly, I never thought I'd see a Dune movie that was good, and I saw one.
There is value in being succinct in what you're telling.
I'm done.
Okay, I guess that means I'm up.
Yeah, I figured you spin from that, Mike. Go for it.
The only thing that really hasn't been mentioned is beyond the soundtrack and the score and all that. It's just the sound design and the way things sound, from the dragonfly ships to swords hitting the shields that they're wearing. All of it sounded natural. There was not something that happened in the movie where I'm like, man, that sounded off. Like everything sounded the way that it looked like it should sound. And when you're creating that in a world like Dune, that's kind of tough to accomplish.
Yeah.
It is. I will say one thing on that comment though. I thought the the weird moments where Paul was having visions and you could sort of hear you could almost make out voices in the background, real subtly in the background. I thought they used that effect too often, and it got a little bit annoying to me.
Okay.
You get a lot of that when the credits roll too. You get the sort of voices you can't make out in the background.
See, that
Yeah, I think I
didn't
noticed
happen in
more of
my
it.
showing. There was no voices in the credits. That's weird.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember any voices in the credits, but I remember the third act of the movie more or less that I feel like I think I noticed it more at the second viewing, maybe just because it was at home and I could hear it a little bit better, but the low voice that Andy's talking about that's in the background during visions and stuff like that, it's somebody is whispering stuff to him, and I still don't really know, I guess, who or what that is, if that's just his consciousness whispering stuff, if that's a person whispering stuff, but they are tied to the visions. They were hard to hear in the theater with the loud sound system, but I could hear them a little bit better at home.
You don't just mean
yeah, I
the
get that.
narration of the visions, right? Or is that what you're talking about?
Not like what Zendaya says.
Okay.
There's definitely somebody, and I noticed that the most in the right before his fight and around the fight at the end, that there during that vision specifically, there's almost every vision he sees, there's someone whispering something there.
Something, but it's indiscernible. You don't know what they're saying, but you can hear someone's whispering.
I think I know who it is, but that's just because they changed the narrator of the visions from the books in the movies. So I'm assuming that it's the narrator from the book is the one speaking at that point, which is a character we haven't met yet.
Okay, that's fair. Mike, do you have anything else?
Anyways, yeah, sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to.
No, you're fine. That's really all I was getting at. Was just the general sound design. I guess the sound design gave weight to the worms when you heard it. That you're talking about something that needs that, and it did it very well, because when they're on sand, it's still tough to convey that. So
and I like that effect too.
Well.
That just to see how it moves through the sand, the vibrations of the sand to get it to go through.
Yeah.
I dug all that stuff too. I thought that was really cool.
It was digging too.
Touche.
I liked actually the how silent it was when it was above ground.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was really cool. And I the Chris that she gives to Paul, that Zendaya gives to Paul, it says that it's a tooth from whatever great sandworm's name is.
Yeah.
Was that the sandworm that confronted him?
No, because I don't think that sandworm actually exists. It's part of their culture's mythology of the one great worm,
Okay. So it did exist, but it doesn't anymore.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I mean, it could, there's always that mystical beast off in the horizon, maybe that would show up, but no one would have seen it recently, so everyone thinks at least it doesn't exist. It could, but I haven't seen the Phoenix in a while, but that doesn't mean it doesn't show up in Harry Potter.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys pretty much covered everything I was going to talk about, like score, special effects, all that stuff. I thought was really well done and really cool. Helped accentuate the movie, flesh it out some more. I don't know. There's very little I feel like that I have bad to say about this movie. I was very like, I think I expected a good movie just because I trust Denny V and what he does. I don't think I sort of like Ian. Not that I had any source material to go off of, but I did not expect it to come together this well. And it's definitely going to be high on my list. I could already probably tell you for movies of 2021 whenever we get to that list. I can't guarantee it'll be number one because I still haven't seen Ghostbusters yet, and there's a good chance that's going to lap everything. But
There's also a Spider-Man.
that's true. Yeah. So it could be a tight race for my top three. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, for right now, this is hands down one of the best movies I've seen this year, for sure. So I don't know. I guess if we're tying this up, should we end with a rating?
Real
out of
quick,
10?
one other scene I want to mention. I think it's on Kaitan, which is the Emperor's homeworld, when Peter, David Dalameshane is there visiting to get the Sardaukar, those soldiers. And,
Yeah.
they're being initiated in this group. But behind them on this raining planet is a bunch of naked men chained to pyramids upside down. And I don't remember that specifically from the book, but that was such a powerful telling of, fuck, that sucks. That sucks.
Not to mention, I think they were draining blood from them, right?
I
And the
wasn't
people
sure if
walking
that was
around-
the rain or the blood, but yeah,
I think they were draining them. They were
like it
putting
was
it in
an
buckets.
upside down crucifixion on a pyramid.
Yeah.
If
And
you
then
look
they were
close
marking
enough
the blood
in-
on all the soldiers.
If you look close enough in the background, Pinhead's there and the Cenobites are also there taking care of all that. That's all just them.
Why'd you
that's-
give out
that's how
spoilers of who the
Cenobite-
Emperor is?
It's House Cenobite. That's all it is. It's
Did you guys get the feeling that the whatever courier or whatever was telling them to assist the Harokin was falsifying like orders? Did you guys get a vibe of that?
Who? Like you talking about the the change, or you talking about the herald, the
Talking about Dave
herald of the
Dismalchin?
change, or Sharon?
Yeah,
Who?
Dismalchin.
Small.
yeah,
So the scene you're talking about, Ian.
Yeah.
yeah. Do you feel like he was telling them to help even though the Emperor didn't actually give that order?
No, he did.
Like, oh, okay.
He gave the order. In the book, it's different because they dress up as Harkonian soldiers, so no one knows that the Emperor's involved. In this, they are very much. Everyone knows the Emperor's involved in this coup. That's
Okay.
one divergence. And because like I said, it's just like Terminator Genesis, and so he wasn't lying to him. I don't think it'd be easy to trick the guy who trains the Emperor's elite fighting forces, even if you are a Mentat. But I just like that recruitment scene too. Just the show, like we're gonna kick Duncan Idaho's ass. Like who?
Yeah,
Kick
the
his
Emperor's
ass.
definitely playing his hand at that point. Like, I have the power to send whoever the fuck I want to take it down this house, and I'm going to
Mhm.
do it.
Like that was more of like I think Paul or Leto mentioned, like, what's happening to us is Paul mentions this is the nightmare of all of the great families, and the Emperor, I think in this version, is just being more overt about showing his power.
Yeah.
Because I mean, with them not dressing up, like even if he is expecting maybe complete annihilation, someone's gonna know the Emperor is involved. Like people would know, and he's being
Yeah.
not as secrety about it.
Gotcha. Anything else, or are we good for ratings?
There's a person
Good.
in the film called Shout Out Maps, and I just want to say that.
Is that a character or
Yes,
someone in the credits?
It's
okay.
one of the Fremen, I believe, in the film.
Okay.
That's the maid, the like house cleaning lady.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I just really like the name Shout Out.
All right. So out of 10, what do you guys give it? Mike, we'll start with you. Out of 10, what do you think?
it's something that I think if it ended on what I'd consider a more round note, a more like neat ending, I guess, it would be really close to a 10 for me. As is, I'll go a 9.5.
Okay. Andy, what do you think out of 10?
I was going to give it an 8.5.
Any reason for the 8.5?
They throw a lot of information at you pretty quickly throughout the whole, like, you're learning everything. If you don't know anything about like any of the lore of Dune or anything, they throw a lot at you, and it's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
So, and they don't exactly do it in the most interesting way.
Okay. Ian, out of 10, what do you think?
Would give it an 8. I don't. It's really good. Like I said, it's a really good film, but it's not at that next level of filmmaking. I think to go higher than that, it's a really good film, but it just doesn't have something as as amazing as even the original Blade Runner or Ghost in the Shell. Or it wasn't shot in 4:3. It just doesn't have something to bring it up to that next level. It's a really great sci-fi film. It's a great film, but it's not on that tier above of films that are the theater personified. It's just not there. Maybe when it's complete.
Yeah, I absolutely love this film. I think it's very well done. It's hard for me to find anything that I don't like about it. I'm on par with Mike. I'm gonna give it a 9.5. I feel like I'd give it a 10 if this felt a little bit more self-contained, and I feel like my rating could change based on whatever part 2 does. Like, if you could basically watch this and part 2 together as just one long story, I feel like it will strengthen part 1.
We hope.
So I'm very anxious to see what part 2 does. Anything else from you guys? I think that's where we'll wrap it up. Nothing?
Make him fuck the worm in the next one.
I highly doubt that'll happen, but keep dreaming, buddy.
I read the book. I know.
All right, if you've enjoyed the show, please support us. Leave a 5-star rating and review. You can give us a share on social media. Make sure to follow or subscribe to the show. Keep up with us. We are on Spotify, iTunes, Google, Anchor, Stitcher. Hopefully anywhere you're listening to a podcast, you can find us. Search us out on Facebook. Search Bry Guy and Super Friends. Go to facebook.com/Bry Guy Super Friends. You can leave us questions, comments, topic suggestions, any of that stuff there. Try to email us, bryguysuperfriends@gmail.com. I haven't checked it in probably 4 or 5 months, so if you email us now, it's probably another 4 or 5 months before I check it. Hit us up on Twitter @BGSuperFriends. I will see that. That we will respond to. Feel free to follow me on Twitch, Jedi Bry Guy. That's Jedi with an I, Bry with a Y. Whenever we decide to do another live show, we will do it there. We are getting closer to 250, where this is 241 or sorry 242, I believe. So again, we're still spitballing ideas. Chances are we will try to do something live. I just don't know what it is yet. And it's probably still going to be a couple months away, but we will prep you whenever we get closer and try to give you some more details leading up to that. But that's it for us. On behalf of Andy, Ian, Mike, and myself, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you guys next time.
Man, we ain't found shit.